Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and this is a breakdown of Disney's 2023 The Haunted Mansion, along with the 2003 film adaptation starring Eddie Murphy and the 2021 Halloween special Muppets Haunted Mansion, and having a famed series of short stories and being one of the most popular attractions. You'd think Disney would stop there, but no, they did not. Our newest Haunted Mansion is directed by director of Dear White People, Justin Simien, who's also a former Disneyland employee, and written by Katie Dippold, and it follows the paranormal tour guide as he helps a single mom and her son with their newfound haunted mansion. Between the minor jump scares, heart-wrenching, and grim storyline, this movie just pulled off so many laughs and is a clear adaptation of the ride of Disneyland. Like, this movie is pretty much the experience of riding the ride at Disneyland, and I loved all the Easter eggs in it. So if you're a fan of the Disney attraction, you're gonna love this movie. If you like confused Danny DeVito, you'll love this movie. An array of surprise cameos, a ton of Easter eggs, and just a lot of advice on grief and learning how to continue forth as the shell of the person you once were after losing a loved one. A lot to talk about. Let's get into it. And this video is sponsored by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes launching your own website a breeze. Like the first movie and like the Disneyland attraction, we open the movie in beautiful New Orleans. Jamie Lee Curtis as Madame Leota says, "Welcome, foolish mortals," which is what the ghost host of the Disney ride says. This narration at the beginning of the movie explains the beauty in the afterlife, but also the ghost host is narrating his own death on the attraction. I actually asked Jamie Lee Curtis about the metaphysics of Madame Leota in the crystal ball.
I'm just curious about the metaphysics of it. Do you think she is trapped inside the crystal ball, or is she in another realm and just is like FaceTiming with us?
No, she is fully trapped in there. She has air purifiers and, Febreze.
Yeah, I was able to interview Jamie Lee Curtis, Tiffany Haddish, Rosario Dawson, LaKeith Stanfield, and director Justin Simien. The full interviews are on the Break Room channel, and I'm gonna include some excerpts throughout this breakdown, but please know that we did those back in June before the SAG-AFTRA strike, and SAG has okayed cast and media outlets fulfilling prior agreements like this, so we're good. Okay, it's now New Year's, and we meet LaKeith Stanfield's character Ben, an astrophysicist, and later revealed wife Alyssa, who gives ghost tours. Ben says he doesn't drink much, so they share a beer, setting up his transition to heavy drinking later on. They bond over their careers not being similar at all, and the sweet happy moment is broken up by a time jump to the current day where a bartender, played by Joe Coy, confronts Ben about still conducting Alyssa's ghost tours now that she is dead. Bummer. I love LaKeith Stanfield in this movie, how he brings his jumpiness and his skepticism in all these shady situations, so I asked him about his background from acting in Jordan Peele's Get Out and other horror movies that he grew up with.
I kind of grew up watching some of the horror films that weren't technically horror films, but were horrific, kind of like Boys in the Hood. It had some scenes in there that were really hard, and Menace to Society, stuff like that. I grew up watching a lot of hard violence that was mirroring real violence in the world and around me, in the environment I grew up in. I saw a lot of that and experienced a lot of that. So those were kind of the hard things to contend with, but it also felt nice to know that the world that I was experiencing and seeing around me, other people had also experienced and been through, so I felt like I wasn't as alone sometimes in where I was living and coming from.
We passed various New Orleans landmarks like Jackson Square, Lafitte's Blacksmith Tavern, one of the oldest bars in North America, and we spent a lot of time on Royale Street where Ben lives, and we see Lafayette Cemetery, but in this movie they call it Fournette Cemetery, as a jazz band plays, a U-Haul truck drives by, and it's featuring a man with a skull, but normal New Orleans U-Hauls feature the classic Mardi Gras mask and jester. We also get a shot of the truck driving on the causeway. This is the long bridge that connects Mandeville to Metairie. We got the same closing shot in the first Haunted Mansion movie when the family drives away. Then we see the Haunted Mansion. The movie version clearly looks bigger than the attraction, but the same pillars, the design of the guardrails, the colors, the windows, it's all identical. Once Gabby, Rosario Dawson, and her son Travis, played by Chase W. Dillon, enter the house, I mean, come on, it is the ride. The same long corridor, the carpeting, I love it. Justin Simien actually talked about how important the mansion's architecture was to him.
There's so much going on in the movie that there's plenty for you if you watch it again. I'll say that, particularly when it comes to the architectural details of the house. And if you know my work, or if you don't, I'm a fan of reference. And all those movies that you mentioned, I watched a lot and made the team watch, especially 1963's The Haunting. That was kind of like the OG haunted house movie that it feels to me that when the Imagineers went in to make the Haunted Mansion, that movie had to have been in their heads. There's a lot of corollaries visually between just how that movie sort of slants mirrors and makes you sort of look at spaces just beyond where you are, and just kind of the angling, and you sort of feel like the house becomes more and more demented the longer they're in there. There's a lot of that's just in the vibe of the Haunted Mansion, and so hopefully by osmosis finds its way back in the Haunted Mansion movie.
When Travis opens the door, we see a ghoulish lion head, dead center, and a snake-like handle, which is at the Haunted Mansion attraction at Disneyland. Once Travis gets into his room of only cobwebs, he's greeted by Constance. Constance Hatchaway is a ghost who stays in the attic with her hatchet. She's decapitated her 5 husbands and waits for more suitors to kill. Then the night statue starts moving. We saw this play out in the 2003 movie when Jim Evers was trying to save his kids. We also get this on the Disneyland ride. It just subtly moves its shield. We learn once you enter the house, you can try to leave, but the spirits will follow you until you return. So anyone can really be a hitchhiking ghost in the logic of this movie. It takes about 2 hours until you're scared or irritated to come back to the house. As they drive away, we see the Hatbox Ghost eerily saying, "You'll be back." Oh, Jared Leto, you don't have to work that hard to be creepy. The Hatbox Ghost is yet another iconic ghost from the Disney attraction. Hatbox Ghost is actually part of the original lineup when the Haunted Mansion did previews in August of 1969, but the effect of the head going inside the hatbox just didn't work properly, so he was decommissioned. Aww. But he began to reappear in 2009 in art and souvenirs for the 40th anniversary, and in 2010, when Guillermo del Toro was attached to the project, he wanted to make the movie around the character, which led to the Hatbox Ghost's return in popularity and return to the Disneyland attraction in 2015. So we are back with Ben, who's visited by fake priest Kent, played by Owen Wilson. Wow! He arrives with a beautiful cat that belongs to nobody. Kent begs Ben to join and help rid Gabby's mansion of ghosts. This is when we learn that Ben started to study spectral photography, making it possible for him to take pictures of ghosts. To do this, he uses a quantum lens. And the idea of a quantum lens is 100% real. The quantum camera takes images of the unseen. A normal camera captures light and it bounces back from an object, but here, you'd capture the image, but the light never bounced back. Though it's not scientifically said to be a ghost, they do call it ghost imaging. After comparing Ben to Frankenstein, he offers him $2,000 for the job. He immediately takes it, grabs his Pentax camera with his quantum lens, and heads to the Haunted Mansion. Now, the room that doesn't seem to be touched on by the ghosts, where Travis and Gabby feel safest, is the elevator room from the Haunted Mansion attraction, the one that you first enter into. It has the same exact wallpaper and these same paintings that stretch out to reveal extra context, and we get a great reveal of that later in the movie. Gabby mentions she found this place on Zillow. The Haunted Mansion in New Orleans is currently listed on Zillow and dropped mid-July. It could be for promotional purposes, but it actually does exist on Zillow. I asked Rosario Dawson what it meant to play a character moving from New York to the outskirts of Louisiana.
For me, housing is everything. And I think having shelter, having safety is paramount. So that's just something that growing up the way that I did is very much instilled in me. So I think there was a nesting kind of thing that I liked. I liked that we all were supposed to be in this room and how she was caretaking for everyone and just understanding, like, even with the circumstances, wanting to make the best of it all the time. And I definitely grew up in that sort of ethos. You know, I grew up with very tenacious people who saw issues and then problem solved how to deal with it with sweat equity, like just bringing their best. And if they were challenged and they didn't know how to do something, they learned. They asked questions. They weren't afraid to evolve. And I really like that for these characters.
Unfortunately, I ran out of time before I could ask her about Ahsoka. Next time, Rosario. To keep Travis company, he has an array of action figures. Sitting in that tent, he kind of reminds me of Cole in The Sixth Sense. But the most notable action figure, of course, is Black Panther. Later, when Kent is creating the Dream Team, he uses Namor to represent Bruce and Storm to represent Harriet. I swear the red cape figurine is Doctor Strange, and I really want it to be because we eventually get to the astral projection. I mean, come on, how could we not bring in the Sorcerer? We also see Travis playing Marvel Monopoly alone, and this movie is sad, but that might be the saddest thing I've ever seen. Like, you can't play Monopoly alone, you silly, silly, lonely child. There's a ton of portraits on the wall, and Ben gets stuck on this one of the Mariner. Now, the Mariner is yet another Easter egg. The portrait lives at Tokyo Disneyland and at Walt Disney World. The Mariner is the ghost of a sea captain who drowned at sea. And of course, we get a glimpse of the white bust whose eyes follow you. Obviously, another part of the attraction at the Disney park. We are introduced to the Duelists, which in the movie are brothers that shot each other, but appear in the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland and in Tokyo and in Walt Disney World. We see the grandfather clock that has 13 instead of 12, and when it strikes 13 at midnight, shift, the crazy paranormal stuff cranks up. And the grandfather clock is an Easter egg from the attraction as well. In Tales of the Haunted Mansion Volume 2, Midnight at Madame Leota's, a man by the name of William Gaines wants to speak to his departed sister. The random librarian offers him a chance to speak with Madame Leota back at the mysterious mansion. As the man tells him a bunch of short stories, William grows impatient, eventually leaving and exploring the mansion for Leota. He wanders into a maze of endless staircases and encounters Constance. Only at midnight does he finally meet Leota. Not only does that sound like a lot this story, but Ben ends up at the endless staircase, another Easter egg to the attraction at Magic Kingdom. He also has a horrible encounter with Constance, so Justin and Katie are playing with the books as well. Then Ben leaves with only doubts, and to his surprise, has guarded his own hitchhiking ghost. It's the Mariner. And I love how the Mariner only wants to watch Deadliest Catch. It's pretty sweet. I actually asked Justin Simeon why he and Katie Dippold chose the Mariner as the ghost that follows Ben home.
That's just always been one of the ghosts that I'm weirdly fascinated by. Like from the painting alone, there's just something about the ancient Mariner painting that always just like caught my eye. I'm always carrying like naval symbols. I don't know why. There's something about the sea. And then like in my research for this movie, I read something about like how water and the sea and, you know, ocean travel is often like a metaphor for emotion and tough feelings. And I can't say I did all of that on purpose, but I thought like that's a really great choice because this is a character that has a lot, you know, Ben has a lot of strong, tough emotions that he's trying to move through. And you've got this Mariner who is like clearly in danger, girl, like looking at the painting. And yet there's a knowing, stern calmness about him that tells you like, oh, he's been through worse. And I don't know, I felt like that all played really well together.
When Ben goes back to the mansion, all the creepy stuff starts happening again with a floating candelabra. We all know that from the Disneyland ride. As Ben wanders down the creepy corridor with a ton of paintings, the one that stands out is the man with an axe and a pig. This may be one of the Sinister 11. I think this is an homage to the ghost host from the ride that kills himself in the stretching room. They both have the same features, white hair, white eyes, and an axe. Having a website is like having a business card. If you run a business, you kinda need one, and that means you need Squarespace. Squarespace is an all-in-one platform that provides you with everything you need to do whatever you need with your website. Squarespace has templates and designs for every category and use case, so even if you're making your very first website, using Squarespace makes it super easy to customize your look, update your content, and add features to fit your unique needs. If you're selling merch, Squarespace makes it easy to do that too. You can design your products, then save time and money by letting Squarespace handle production, inventory, and shipping. And if you're selling any other kind of physical goods, digital goods, or even a service, Squarespace makes it easy to build your storefront and grow your business. To check out for yourself, head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/newrockstars to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. We start to learn the lore behind the house, and it has a lot to do with William Gracie, who is a tombstone at the Haunted Mansion ride. William Gracie was in tribute to Disney's Imagineer, Yale Gracie, who had a hand in making the Haunted Mansion attraction. We learned that the mansion was fully built out of nowhere. Then William Gracie bought it off an undisclosed buyer and that his wife Eleanor died from yellow fever. We later learned from Madame Leota that he hired Leota to help him reach Eleanor, and she performed seance after seance until they let the wrong ghost in and lured William to his death by poison. In the 2003 adaptation, the owner of the manor was Edward Gracie, and he lost his wife to poison. It doesn't feel completely the same, but the same homage to Gracie and arsenic are always finding a way into the franchise. The ghost that lured William is later revealed to be the Hatbox Ghost, and he needs 1,000 souls. It's currently at $9.99. The ghost host at the Haunted Mansion attractions will sometimes refer to the ghosts as the Happy Haunt.
We have 999 happy haunts here, but there's room for 1,000.
Yeah, flip that 999, you get 666, and holy Mephisto, we're going to hell! Regardless, the motive to get to 1,000 was always a tale linked to the Haunted Mansion's ghost host. When Harriet decides to leave until they pay her up front, she returns 2 hours later saying a ghost horse was chasing her through her bedroom, which Tiffany Haddish makes a reference to later in my interview with her. In the 2003 Haunted Mansion, we saw the ghost horse carriage in action. I believe this one is just a horse, just another Easter egg to the Haunted Mansion attraction. They find out there is a seance room, and they get to the entrance behind a painting of a lovely woman, and I'm pretty sure this is April to December, a painting at the Haunted Mansion that from one angle is a lovely young woman, and then by December, she's a lowly mean old hag. When they arrive at the seance room, each chair is different. The wicker leather chair for Harriet resembles a dune buggy. The chair Ben gets has the same pattern as a chair on the attraction ride we see near the Knight statue. Kent has a rustic chair with heart-like designs. Travis has the tiny wooden boy chair, and Gabby has a black and red velvet chair with a raven. And this raven you can can see on the chair with Madame Leota in the Haunted Mansion seance room, but it's also seen throughout the entire ride, which is why it's so funny when Bruce says, "Am I the only one that didn't know that bird was alive?" when it flew away. When Harriet begins trying to reach Madame Leota, she's immediately scrambled in her chair. Not only does it resemble the dune buggies of the ride, and just as Simeon indicated that was the intention here, it moves like one too, immediately spins her around and shoves her down the hallway out the door, mimicking the ride. So Harriet explains how the souls are trapped here. Essentially, the souls stuck here were not at peace, and souls that moved on, that she cannot reach, must have been at peace. This calms Ben, who is still grieving over losing his wife Alyssa in the car accident, and this is when Harriet mentions ghost winks. Ghost winks are when a loved one passes on but leaves little hints that they're still with you, like the tater tots. I am obsessed with the idea of ghost winks, and both Tiffany Haddish and Justin Simeon opened up about their personal ghost winks.
When my grandma passed away last year, one of my friends a few days after said, "Oh, you know, your grandmother, she will like send a white feather. Every time you see a white feather, that's your grandmother letting you know that she's around every time you see one, right?" And then like the next day or day after, I'm coming out of my bedroom and there are feathers all over the living room, everywhere. And there's a dead bird right there. And my cat's like, "Hey, Mom."
My Aunt Virgie passed just before I made my second movie. And I'll never forget the day after her funeral, sitting and staring at a clock, and the sort of minute hand was stuck on the V. And it wouldn't move past the V. And I felt her presence first. I just felt her, and I saw it. I stared at this clock, and it was just stuck on the V, on the 5. And I even videoed it, and I caught the moment. It just kept going. But it was so strange. The clock was not running out of battery. It never did that again. But yeah, there's plenty of those.
So Harriet, when trying to perform an astral projection spell, it only works on Ben, who, grieving so much, was able to leave his own body. One of many horror homages in this movie that just kind of reminded me of Insidious, wandering in his ghost form when he comes across a ghost man with his dog, which I think is a shout out to the caretaker from the ride, but the caretaker wasn't dead. So did he and his dog die? We meet the hitchhiking ghost, the classic ones from the ride. They look exactly the same from the 2003 film. Ezra Bean is the tallest one, Professor Phineas Plump is a chunky one, and Gus was the one who was a prisoner. One of the ghosts terrified of Crump is a painting of the werecat lady. This is one of the changing portraits you see in the entrance of the Haunted Mansion. He comes across an organ player, the man with a top hat, also from the ride, like the part of the ride where we're looking down to see everyone. In 2016, he was named Herr Victor Geist. Like in the attraction, he plays the organ and the spirits shoot out of it. Once Ben is confronted by the Hatbox Ghost, they realize that they need to banish him, but to banish him, they need something personal of his. Unfortunately, we don't know who he is, so Bruce gets the idea to get a police sketch artist, comedian Hassan Minaj, and he draws him perfectly, and he had skin to make it easier to see. In the library, Bruce finds out that the Hatbox Ghost is none other than Alistair Crump, who has the same last name as the caretaker, and I'll be so mad if Alistair killed him and the dog. The room they're in is the library that exists in the Haunted Mansion at Disney World and Tokyo Disneyland. Alistair was basically a serial killer and killed a lot of people that disowned him, looked down on him, and treated him poorly, and one day his staff at his manor turned on him and cut his head off. Once they find out his name, all hell breaks loose, and the Hatbox Ghost is actively trying to sabotage them. This is my favorite Easter egg. We get to see the stretching room in action, and guess what? The chamber has no windows and no doors. The wallpaper starts to shift down, and the paintings on the wall start to help them with words of encouragement and advice. The floor turns into sand, dynamite, and alligators. On the Disney ride, you enter the room and you're welcomed by the ghost host, and you see 4 paintings, a bearded man, a young woman, an old woman, and a man in a bowler hat. And as the room stretches, it reveals the truth behind those paintings. The bearded man sitting atop lit dynamite, the young woman balancing on a tightrope above hungry alligators, the old woman holding a rose sitting on top of her husband's gravestone, and a hatchet embedded in his head, and the bowler hat man sitting on the shoulders of 2 other men who are waist deep in quicksand. Not only do we get the reveals, but we get the real-time scenario, like an alligator chasing after Travis, the fear of dynamite exploding soon, the quicksand bin immediately falls in, the woman says, "You can go like my husband." They're surrounded by only death. Luckily, the gargoyles that hang from the walls are easy to grab and get Travis and Ben to safety. While Travis and Ben are stuck in the stretching room, Harriet and Gabby are calming Bruce down, who's having a mild heart attack. Harriet starts waving sage in front of the door, and the door starts breathing. At the Haunted Mansion ride, once you're carried backwards in the dune buggy, you see a series of doors like this. One is the breathing door. In the Haunted Mansion Frights of Fancy, the door is possessed by a shy ghost. ghost, but in this movie, it's controlled by the lunatic Hatbox Ghost. Luckily, Travis, Ben, and Kent are out of the house and begin traveling up north to grab something personal to Hatbox Ghost to banish him, and on the way out, they're attacked by screaming trees, and this is a shout out to the scary trees. There are 7 trees in the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland. They just have mean, scary faces. Once they get to Crump Manor, it's a dorky murder mystery type ghost tour, and it's being organized by Winona Ryder of Beetlejuice fame. Her partner in the murder mystery is Dan Levy as Vic, and these cameos were so weird but very entertaining. I don't understand why Dan Levy was in so many trailers for this movie, but from these two, we learned Alistair would place pillows in his seat to feel above everyone else, which we actually saw one of the ghosts doing right before his arrival. He also had a painting of his mistress put up when he was married and then left his wife for his mistress. The plaque below her portrait said, "I do not trust any man who reads nor woman who reads." Because why would it say anything else, I guess? Ben, Travis, and Kent find the head of Alistair Crump under the house, and they take his hat back to Haunted Mansion. This scene where Travis has to retrieve the hat reminds me of the first movie where Jim sends his daughter into the water to retrieve the key. Additionally, the parts of the Crump's manor that's off limits are blocked with a small golden chain held by bat wings. That is the same one you see in the Haunted Mansion guiding you to the dune buggies. Travis also refers to this underhouse graveyard as the Tunnel of Terror, which could be a play off the infamous Tower of Terror attraction. Once they return back to the Haunted Mansion, Kent reveals he's a fraud, just a fake priest that had Halloween supplies, but that doesn't stop Ben from encouraging him to continue helping the team. Inside, Harriet and Gabby are missing, and a possessed Bruce tries to poison Kent and Ben with arsenic. I said it once and I'll say it again, they love poisoning people in these movies. Where do you even get arsenic? Eventually, Ben, Kent, and Gabby and Bruce have to take on Crump with his ghost army. He has the bride and her 5 headless husbands, an executioner, a headless knight, a Venetian ghost, an African warrior, and a mummy, and an array of diverse dead people. To get away from the ghosts as a distraction, Kent Scooby-Doo runs through different doors. It's very cartoony. Luckily, in a heartfelt speech, Kent gets an army of ghosts on his side. Ben distracts the Hatbox Ghost. Bruce runs in with a piece of the hat, left to finish the banishing spell, and Harriet assists Madame Leota out of her crystal ball as they all arrive in the backyard cemetery to face Crump once and for all. The ghosts are flying all over the place, and it's exactly like the ride towards the end where you're riding through the graveyard and the sky is filled with ghosts. I actually asked Jamie Lee Curtis and Tiffany Haddish about these two mediums from different eras and their connection, and I just love their response. I wanted to share with you.
You know, the medium of the present is inspired by the medium of the past and looks up to the medium of the past. And I feel like it's very much how we really are. Like, I have admired you and looked up to you, and now that I get to she's more than what I ever expected. Like, so much better than what I ever, my imagination is garbage compared to who you are in real life. And it's so, I get teary and emotional because I just feel like I'm so blessed and so lucky to be able to be with you.
But that's what the movie is.
I know, right? When you meet your heroes and they're just as good as you imagine them to be.
No,
yes.
The movie's about that. The movie is about connecting to something and stepping up with that confidence that person has given you to say, I can do this too, which is what I like, this sort of mentor-mentee part of it, even though I have really bad breath in the movie because I haven't brushed my teeth in 300 years.
Well, you're in a crystal ball. There's a barrier. There you go.
Yeah, but now I'm out, and then this poor woman had to be next to me.
I ain't worried about it.
So once they are able to banish the Hatbox Ghost, the ghosts realize they don't really want to leave, and Travis and Gabby agree to keep them company for as long as they live. The ballroom is alive with dancing ghosts, just like we see in the Disney attraction, and they dance to a newer version of Grim Grinning Ghosts, made for the soundtrack, I assume. At the end, it's Halloween, and Kent is dressed as a member of Run DMC, which is hilarious because we know Joe Simmons, member of Run DMC, became Rev Run after his music career practicing as a minister and preacher. With Kent leaving, we also see the cat he thought was Ben's. That cat has been sitting around the house during the entirety of the movie, and it is revealed the cat's name is Tater Tot, one of Alyssa's favorite foods, and this is another ghost wink, reminding him that she'll always be there with him. I want to extend a huge thanks to Jessica Clemons for writing this breakdown. She is the ultimate hitchhiking ghost of new rock stars, and that's why you'll see her little ghost winks in all of our videos still. Please subscribe to all 3 channels in the New Rockstars network. Follow me at Erik Voss, follow Jessica at Lulu_Clemons, follow New Rockstars, and thanks for watching. See you next time, everybody. Bye.